this morning. And so I want to welcome each and every one of you to the Meet Us in the Garden series for 2021. My name is Ann Chen, and I am the Ag and Natural Resources Educator over in Lorain County, and I will be your moderator this morning. And so just a couple of housekeeping things. If you will, please put your comments in chat and any questions you might have for our speaker this morning into the Q&A. I will be coordinating all of those for you. This morning, we have Susan Cowling, who will be speaking with us this morning about nature's cues and phenology. And Susan's background, she's been a master gardener since 2008, and she has a passion for both teaching and for orchids. And with that, I will turn it over to Susan. And thank you.
Thank you, Ann, very much. Good morning and welcome to the first presentation in Lake County's Master Gardeners Meet Us in the Garden series. Thank you for joining us. Today we're talking about phenology, but first a couple of comments. As you saw on the slide as you came in, which is still showing, we have a full slate of talks throughout November. After each monthly talk, you will be sent another email with the link to sign up for the next one. In April, we will be presenting Victory Gardens in 2021. We hope you can join us. We will continue using Zoom webinar platform at least through June, as OSU has stopped in-person classes until June 30th at the earliest. I want to thank Tom DeHaas, the OSU A&R educator in Lake County, for all of his help in putting together this talk. I hope you noticed in the message in the subject line that contained the link to this webinar, it directed you to the bottom of the email to find the handouts. One is by Denise Ellsworth of OSU about phenology. The other was created by two other Lake County Master Gardeners, Sandy Mickia and Christy Webster. It contains March gardening tips and titles of books that relate to our topic for today. Sandy and Christy have put together similar handouts for each month throughout the Meet Us in the Garden series. Thank you, Sandy and Christy. And again, thank you for joining us. So let's begin. Oh dear. It is nature's cues, a.k.a. phenology. And what we're going to talk about today is, first of all, phenology, what it is, and how it relates to something called growing degree days, and how both of those in turn relate to integrated pest management. And we'll go through some examples, and we'll use a website that OSU developed to follow growing degree days and what it will tell us. Have you ever heard of things like plant potatoes when the first dandelions bloom? Or cut in June will come back too soon. Cut in July will surely die. Or plant corn when the oak leaves are the size of a squirrel's ear. Now, I don't know about you, but I've got enough squirrels in my backyard that I sure as heck can figure out when the oak leaves are that size. And perhaps you have some of your own. In fact, if we were together, I'd be asking you to share those with us. If you'd like to put them in the chat so others can see your phenology statements, please feel free. Now, the sayings we just went through have been passed down over the years, and in fact are based on many years of personal knowledge. And many of these sayings are in fact really quite accurate, and they form the science we're talking about today, phenology. Now, a definition. Phenology is a science, and it studies how the relationship between climate and cyclic events of nature are going to affect living organisms and how they respond to the kinds of changes that we're seeing from season to season and within the climate. These seasonal events have a correlation to plant, insect, and animal life. Now, plants, birds, insects, arachnid pests, all organisms are sensitive to temperature and day length. It's how birds know when to migrate north and then south. And they all develop on a regular schedule. It's not random. And the timing of most of these natural events is, in fact, based on a combination of the amount of sunlight, the amount of moisture, and in fact, most importantly, how much warmth we've had during the day. So what? Who cares? Well, you've heard Japanese beetles referred to as June beetles. Well, that's because they typically show up in June, but not always. If we've had a really, really warm spring, they might show up in May. Well, you can ask, so what again? But watching these pest indicator plants, if you want to call them that, tell us when to apply certain preventative measures so that, in fact, the pests don't get the best of us and our plants. That's how it's related to integrated pest management. One of the most important things in IPM is scouting. That is walking around your property, looking what's happening, and knowing what might happen next. Because phenology, looking at the plants and insect activities and other things, tell us when to look for what. The common lilac is but one example of a plant that tells us things. Crabgrass and lilac have a couple of things in common. Crabgrass will germinate when the soil temperature at 4 inches down is 55 degrees. Believe me, it's not there yet. But when it gets there, that's when crabgrass will start to germinate. Well, that's about the same time when the common lilac is in the early bloom stage. An early bloom stage is one of those key phenology basics that we want to pay attention to. Early bloom stage means that at least 50% of the flower clusters are open on one bloom, with one bloom. So look at your lilac. If it's got a few flowers open, that's when you put your pre-emergent crabgrass herbicide down. If you wait until your lilac is in full bloom, it's too late. Crabgrass is already on its way. Again, what's next? Well, you could start collecting your own data. You could come up with your own predictors. We could head to the Farmer's Almanac. You might rely on granddaddy's maybe faulty memory. He probably has a lot of kernels of truth there. But there's a better way. It's called Growing Degree Days, or GDD for short. Now, what are some underlying basics for growing degree days? Development of any organism will occur when the temperature exceeds a minimum developmental threshold. That means below that, no development occurs. Now, this minimum development threshold differs by organisms. It's typically in the range of 50 to 85 or 90 degrees. Now, these daily temperature readings are used to calculate what we call growing degree days, which is a measure of the accumulated heat. That is a compilation of how much heat these organisms have been exposed to. If we know the growing degree days, we can predict certain plant development. We can predict when we're going to see that first bloom occur. We can predict when you're going to see full bloom or when crabgrass is going to germinate. These plant events have been also correlated with insect development, both the beneficials and the harmful ones. And it's really all about that orderly progression of horticultural events. You have one thing happen before another thing. You have the lilacs start to bloom before the crabgrass germinates. Here's another example. You may not have a forsythia in your yard, but hey, they're all over the place, so you can't miss them. They're so beautiful and bright yellow. They're as predictive of crabgrass development as the lilac. So when you see the border forsythia bloom, you know it's time to put down your pre-emergent herbicide for crabgrass, because your forsythia is going to bloom at about 116 growing degree days. Crabgrass germination is around 155 growing degree days. Now, that doesn't mean that that's about 40 days later. No. Growing degree days, once it starts getting warm, accumulate rapidly. We'll see that later. Now, this is just a little math. I'm an ex-statistician, so I love math. There are 3 methods for calculating GDDs. There's the average method, there's the modified average method, and there's a modified sine wave method. If you're interested in the first or the third, I encourage you to go online and look it up. We're going to talk about the modified average method. That's the one that uses 50 degrees as the lower temperature reading, the baseline. The upper threshold for this method is 86 degrees. If we know the growing degree days, we can predict also how different insects are going to be developing. And that's important that we know whether we're talking about adult emergence or egg lay or egg hatch, because you need to target the most appropriate life stage with your control measures. If you're using some sort of insecticide on a hard-shelled insect, it probably won't do much good if it's a contact type. But if you're dealing with crawlers or the larvae, it's probably going to be very effective. So we want to make sure we know when each of these life stages in insect development might occur. So the modified average method, very simple. You take the maximum temperature of a day plus the minimum temperature, divide by 2. In other words, you want the average temperature for that day. And you subtract off the base temperature, or 50 degrees. Most plants don't grow at temperatures greater than 86 or less than 50. I know I don't do well over 85, so I can understand that. Negative calculated values are considered zero. You didn't gain any heat that day, in other words. So a couple of examples, just because I'm a math geek. So if you've got a high of 83 and a low of 61, that gives you an average temperature of 72. You subtract off the 50 and you get 22 growing degrees. On a cooler day, maybe your high is only 57. I think that's about where we're supposed to be today, not sure. And a low of 33. Well, that gives us an average of 45. Subtract 50, that's a negative number. So we got 0 degree days on that cool day. I want to recognize Dan Herms, who did a lot of the research on phenology when he was working at OSU. And as I understand from Anne, he used graduate students to help him collect that data, and she was one of them. Currently, he works for research department at Davey Tree. And what Dan recognized is that there is a natural progression of events in both the plant and insect world. So again, what next? Well, you could start collecting your own data. You've got the formula now. You could come up with your own predictors. Again, Farmer's Almanac or Granddaddy. Actually, there's a much, much better way, and it comes out of OSU. It's called a growing degree calculator, and it's keyed to your particular zip code. And we're going to try that one out later on in the talk. This is what it looks like. And I put in the chat box before we started the link of how to get here. So you'll have it. And you can see it will be asking for your zip code and the date. There's the website, that's what's in the chat box. And if you enter your zip code, it will display a daily calendar of all of the phenological events occurring in your area. Now, when I was trying this out for this talk, I discovered that for some reason, some zip codes don't work. So if you're in a large area where there are many, many zip codes, you might have to try a couple before you come up with the one that will give you the information you need. But they'll all be keyed to your area. And if you wanted to, you could enter a specific date. So for example, you wanted to find out how many growing degree days were last year in comparison to this year. Well, you could dump in last year's date. And we are going to try it out later. This is what it looks like. You'll see in the middle, it shows what the growing degree days are for that particular date. This was last year. We were supposed to give this talk last year, but unfortunately, that nasty COVID-19 crept up and we had to cancel. So about a year ago, we had 53 growing degree days. And if you look at to the left of the deep gray box, you see what happened has already happened, and to the right is what's about to happen. And you can also get a listing like this so that you can see how things progress. This is near me. It's the zip code is 44077, and that's the site where this is monitored is in Fairport Harbor. Okay, now some key phenological data. Sorry, I have trouble with that pronunciation. You will see on on the website that they refer to first bloom and then full bloom for certain plants. First bloom is the date the first flower on the plant opens to reveal pistils and or stamens. And that's what the lilac picture on the top looks like. There's just a few that have popped open. Full bloom is the date when 95% of the flowers have opened. At least 1 out of 20 buds are still closed. So you need to know that and to be able to recognize it on the plants so you know which date you're looking for. Here are some examples that we're going to be going through. They came from that previous table. And as you can see, I've got them in pairs. There's red maple, eastern tent caterpillar, eastern redbud, followed by gypsy moth, and so on. And the growing degrees, as you can see, just keep increasing. So we're going to be looking across much of the season, growing season. Okay, red maple. That, if we scoop back up to here, red maple, you can see the picture from the website. It does say growing degree days 44. And so when we go down here, there it is, growing degree days 44. Well, not too much later, the eastern tent caterpillar is going to hatch its eggs, or the eggs are going to hatch. They're just sitting there. And that's at growing degree days 92. Again, remember, growing degree days can change dramatically if we have a very warm day. Now, these little critters in there are the caterpillar. They're about 1/2 inch to 1 inch long right after egg hatch. That's when you should start looking to get rid of them. The way to get rid of them is really to just gather up the net, and you don't want to just put it in your lawn and leaf bag, because those little critters are just going to climb out and build another tent and climb back in. So they will emerge and feed on the leaves of the tree. They can denude the tree. If it's a strong, well-established tree, it just will look ugly for a year, but it'll come back next year. If it's a stressed tree or a very young tree, you really want to get that thing off. Now, if it just happens to be on a small twig, I'd just cut the whole thing off and either bury it, or if you can, burn it. But at any rate, you want to get it into the trash and not put back into the environment. If we look at the eastern redbud and gypsy moth, this is something where probably could have used a better example, because the growing degree days of these two events are right on top of each other. There's not going to be any space between them. But the good thing about the gypsy moth is it lays its eggs in the fall, and so you can get rid of that egg mass up until the time that your redbud goes into bloom. And that's how you control it, basically, is just keep an eye on for the egg mass and just scrape it off and get rid of it. Another one using the common lilac. Here you're seeing that the first bloom comes around 234 days. And what occurs at that point is pine needle scale. The egg hatch or first generation occurs at 305 days. So as soon as you see your lilacs start to bloom, start looking around for on your pine needles to see if there's any scale. This is a close-up look of the pine needles. These are the crawlers, and there are some mature females in there. They are the hard-shelled things. These red spots are the adult females. You want to get rid of the crawlers, well, because that's when they are more susceptible to the treatments you may be applying. Let's move along to the spirea. This is Van Houten spirea. It's in first bloom. Growing degree days, we're getting further into the season, are 309. Probably a day or so later would be at 330, and you'll start seeing the adult emergence of the lilac borer. Now he's easy to see. He's rather large. You can see him over here in that oval. And one of the control mechanisms is to trap them. The males are going to be attracted to a female pheromone that this trap puts out. And you can see it's working because he's heading straight for it. The black cherry is associated with euonymus scale. They're probably a day or two separated based on the growing degree days. This is first bloom again. And what we're looking at is the egg hatch. It's the first generation. If you see this alligator looking thing here, that is a beneficial bug. It's called the lacewing, and it's in the larvae stage, and it is hungry. And so it's going to be going after all of those euonymus scale larvae. You can actually purchase lace wings in this larvae stage. If you have a large infestation, just let them go and they're just going to munch away. The nice thing about lacewings is they just continue to munch as they grow. And so even adults are going to be a beneficial insect for you to have around. Another stage of this insect is we see it at its crawler stage. And again, this would be a good stage in which to treat it because it's still soft-bodied, and dormant oils and other such things will help you eradicate it. Moving to an adult, another adult, that would be the bronze birch borer. It comes out after the black locust is in first bloom. And the problem with the birch borer is that it will go after stressed or young trees. If it goes after a well-established tree, it won't do as much damage. This is where IPM comes in again. If you keep good cultural practices, you plant the birch, the bronze birch, where it should be planted, where it gets lots of sun, and you keep it well watered and you mulch it properly, it's going to have enough strength to not be susceptible to this borer. But if you've got a young tree and you haven't been watching out for it, and it isn't in an optimum spot in your garden, it might not survive the birch borer. Okay, moving into the growing degree days in the 500s, we have the mountain laurel coming out in first bloom, and probably on the same day or close to it, you're going to have the egg hatch for juniper scale. Now this is very similar to the scale we had on the pine needles, and you're going to treat it in a very similar way. These are the crawlers, and in both stages, the crawler stage and the egg hatch stage, they're very susceptible to anything, dormant oils or those sorts of things. Okay, this is, I believe, is the last one we're going to see this way. Then we're going to go look at some things on the website. The little leaf linden, it's in first bloom again. We're well into the season. We're in the 900s. And it's should be somewhere around June, because that's when the Japanese beetle comes out. It's the adult emergence. And we know how devastatingly destructive this little critter can be. But there's a way to control it, and that's in the spring. If you can get rid of the grubs, you can see the grubs on the left-hand side of this page. They're what is destroying your lawn. And if you can pick up sections of your lawn, you may find a boatload of these guys down there. But if you get rid of the grubs, then you won't have the beetles, because they develop into the Japanese beetle. And when it's warm enough, they just crawl out of the ground and go attack your rose bushes or your impatiens or whatever flowering plant it can find. The thing that you need to be sure you do is to get rid of as many of these adults as you can as soon as you see them, because if they find a really good place to feed, like you've got lots of beautiful rose bushes, they're going to send off a scent, and that's going to attract any other Japanese beetle in the neighborhood. So as soon as you see them, start getting rid of them. You can pick them up and drop them into soapy water. That's what I do. It's very easy. They die, and I just put the container out, and the birds just pick them off. They think it's a lovely treat. You can use contact insecticides in summer, but remember, a lot of these insecticides are going to impact our beneficial insects, our pollinators, and the other beneficials that are helping to get rid of some of our other pest problems. So you can see in this picture just how devastating Japanese beetle damage can be. Now, I know there are traps out there for Japanese beetles, but as I've been told, if you want to use them, put them in your neighbor's backyard, because otherwise you're just attracting the beetles to your yard. Now, if you like your neighbor, you probably don't want to do that. Okay, let's go to a Phenology calendar demo. This is, again, the website. It is in the chat box, and so I'm just going to click on it, and we'll see what we've got. All right, there it is. It's March 13th, 2021. I'm going to start by putting in my zip code. That's Fairport Harbor. And as you can see, it's very similar to what we had last year. The growing degree days for today is 62. You can see
Susan, if I could interrupt you for just a second, you actually need to stop sharing and share the website. We're not able to see your page.
Oh, okay, sorry. I will do that if I can. Okay, stop share. Okay. All right. Oops. Okay, can you see it now?
Yes, we're good. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right, so this is the Phenology, sorry, I can't say that word, Phenology calendar from OSU. And we're in Lake County, or actually where the site is in the Fairport Harbor, that's down close to the lake. Their red maple is about to come into full bloom. Remember, we looked at it before in first bloom. If you look further to your right, so if you see the red maple in bloom, the white pine weevil is about to come into adult emergence. Some of the things to notice on this page is we've got up at the top is the particular day's growing degree day. It's this is the name of what's being affected by that growing degree day. And so it could be anything. And so they give you a picture mostly. Sometimes they don't have a picture, but almost all do. And then there's the name of the event that we're going to be seeing. So let's try a couple of other couple of other zip codes and see how things change. Remember, we're at 62 in Lake County. 44144 is near the zoo. So let's check that one. And the growing degree days in Cleveland, at least that part of Cleveland, is much lower. It's only at 41. So you can see there is a difference across the state in terms of what's happening. So you can see, if you scan a little bit to the right, you'll see the red maple is first bloom. That's what we had seen before in my static example. I believe this one is out west of us. Let's try it out and see where we go. This is near Toledo. Yes, it's west of us. They're very close to where we are. They're 31. So they're very close to where they are in Cleveland. You can see, we were talking about progression. You can see that the things that are happening are not changing in terms of order. That stays the same. It's the growing degree day that is affecting those. Let's try one that I believe is south of us. I may be wrong. Yes, this is down around Columbus. They're only at 39. So again, it really depends on where you are, what is happening. But this will tell you what you want to start looking for as far as growing degree days and what's going to be happening. Okay, what else do we find on this particular website? Well, we can look at the section that says weather, and these are where all of the stations are, and they're listed as to what they are. We can look at some growing degree graphs, and this is going to be linked to wherever the data is being collected. So you want to pick something that's close to you. Ashtabula isn't as close to me as Perry is, so I'm going to check Perry and see what it looks like. Well, this is showing me that in February, we had a few warm days, but we only got to 4 growing degree days. In March, we already gained 26 growing degree days. So you can look at that kind of data, if you like graphs. We can back. We can look at soil precipitation, and again, I'm going to go to Perry and see what the data looks like. And that tells me, stop. Oh, please, I'm sorry. Oh, gosh. All right. So we've got historical average of precipitation in Perry, and we have the cumulative precipitation, and we've got the daily. But what it tells me is we had, in the past, we had more precipitation than we have this year. So there's a lot of information on our growing degree days. All right, what else does it tell us? Well, the nice thing, it's got a glossary which tells you what growing degree days are, how to calculate them, and the like. And I'll click to summary. And this one is kind of neat because it tells me, I'm going to switch back to my state. Oh dear. And I can see how things have changed over the years. Last year, we weren't nearly as warm. In 2018, we were incredibly warm. Even in 17, we were even warmer. But back down in 2015, boy, were we cold. So this is an incredibly useful site. And the best thing to do is to bring it up for your particular zip code and then just fool with it and play around with the kinds of information it can give you. Okay, I'm going to try and get back to my presentation so I can finish up. Are we back? Yes. Okay. So in summary, I wanted to share with you what we've been talking about. Pest emergence is going to follow a progression, and it's based on the growing degree days that we've accumulated. And we predict what's going to happen by what is in bloom, because they follow the similar progression. And it is all part of a strong integrated pest management regime. Here are some references. I can bring them back up if you're interested in them. And then questions.
Thank you, Susan, for a very informative talk about phenology. If any of you have any questions, please be sure to place those into the chat with regards to phenology. Susan, maybe you can comment, are the Lake County Master Gardeners involved with Hotline already for 2021?
We start in April. So it would be the first Tuesday in April that they would be available. And I don't think I have the phone number handy right now, but
okay.
It's on our website, lake.osu.edu, and yes, they what's the first Tuesday?
I'll get that for you in just a second. And okay. In the meantime, there is a question. Some of the examples showed adult emergence. Just moved a little bit on me. Does that mean those particular pests can only be eradicated or controlled at that stage?
That's particular. It really depends on the type of organism it is. For example, with the beetles, once they come out, that's, they're adults, and that's how you can control them if you haven't gotten rid of your grubs. And it would really depend on the particular adult you're talking about. And so your best bet is to just go to your search engine. And if you put in first in Google or whatever, if you type in site, SITE:, EDU, space, and then type whatever it is you're looking for in terms of the insect, you will get research-based information that has been produced by an educational institution. And that's the best way to do it, because it's going to depend on the particular organism you're talking about.
Who maintains the data stations, and how are their locations determined? Do you know?
I wish I did. Maybe you do, Ann, because you worked on collecting the data.
If we're talking about the weather stations, so some of those are USDA locations. Some of them are related to OSU research sites. For example, the one that's in Ashtabula is associated with the grape research site in Kingsville. So that's where some of them are located. But some of them, for example, I know that the one in Avon, which is in my county, is maintained by USDA.
Thank you, Ann.
Susan, what are your thoughts about beneficial nematodes for insects like grubs?
I've actually used them and I found them effective. That's a non-research based opinion. That's just my opinion. But I have used and I have had some success. I always aim for non-insecticide solutions if I can find them. I've also used spores.
And remember, if you're looking to use a milky spore product, those are very species specific. For example, milky spore is specific for Japanese beetles. There are many, many grubs that are white. They can vary a little bit in size, but we have mast chafers, we have ambrosia beetles, we have Japanese beetles. So those are actually identified by what's referred to as the raster pattern on the grub itself. So know that, you know, one product is not necessarily going to fix all of your problems. So
thank you for that.
Having looked at the growing degree phenology calendar season, are there very many vegetable pests that are a part of that list?
I'm afraid that's something I'd have to go and investigate. I did not look at that specifically.
Do we have any other questions for Susan this afternoon, or this morning, I should say? And just one other one. So there is some interest about information on controlling gnats. And of course, identification of those is important. So that's why I would suggest that you reach out to the master gardeners in Lake County for proper identification and some control measures. Lots of thank yous for your excellent presentation this morning. There's lots of appreciation of your demonstration of the phenology calendar as well. And I will make one other mention. If you are not already signed up for bygl.osu.edu, that's the Buckeye Yard and Garden Line. We often use the phenology calendar to for some of our reports. So if we know that something is going to be emerging, you'll likely see a pest alert on Beagle as well. Let's go back over to questions. They would like to see the calendar slide for the upcoming events again, if possible.
Okay. Oh, shoot. I don't want to do that. There you go.
There we go. Any thoughts about squash borers and how to manage them effectively?
The squash borers, the best advice I was given by someone within the extension office was, if you want to make sure you get squash and it isn't just the vines aren't destroyed, is to plant some early away from where you're going to plant the ones you want to grow. And the squash borers will go after your first plants and will ignore your second ones. Again, I go for non-insecticidal controls.
And I'll just handle this other question directly, which asks about nematodes and being harmful to beneficial insects. Remember that some of our predators are very species specific, but most of our predators are generalists. So just like a lion will feed on a variety of prey on the Serengeti, most of our predators are going to feed on a variety of insects, both some beneficial as well as some that are harmful to us. So always be cautious when you're looking at using any of these things. Be sure to be familiar with all of the limitations and cautions. Do we have any final comments or thoughts for Susan before we wrap up for this morning? Carolyn, I see your comment says, does this apply to animals as well? I'm not quite sure what you are referring to. Oh, for nesting. Yeah, that would be an interesting question to pose to our wildlife biologist, Marty Tichnell. I know that northern migration is definitely key to both day length as well as temperature. Obviously, as food becomes available, and that's key to temperature, that's going to be one of the things that's going to drive northern migration for many of our warblers and our other songbird species.
I'm not sure what, in the question and answer, where are books again? If you're talking about the handout that lists books, it was at the bottom of your email that contained the link for this talk.
I did see that there's another question in chat having to do with pre-emergent herbicides and effect on pollinators. The best information I can give you is to read the labels carefully. You know, the label is the law as far as application. And I know that many of the labels are now bearing information that are, if the product is known to affect our pollinators, very often you will see with many of our insecticides, you will see a bee warning on those products. So that would be the most appropriate information that would be available to us. We thank everybody for their time this morning. It looks like it's going to be, although a beautiful day outside. So go out and take a walk in the woods or walk in the park. Certainly does good for both body and mind. So.
And thank you again for hosting this for me.
My pleasure. I was happy to curate for you. As far as information on your upcoming Master Gardener class.
We are hoping to train in January 2022. As soon as we have detailed information, it will be posted to the lake.osu.edu site. Or you can send a request for information to our email address, which I believe is in the chat, but it is mgv Lake County, all one word, @gmail.com. And I believe it's listed in the chat along with the telephone number for the helpline. Yeah, both the email and the phone line, the phone number for the helpline is 440-853-2634, both of which are in the chat.
Oh, and Amy asks which class that you took. So you were the, you said the class of 2008, right, Susan, for your MGV?
Yes, it was 2008. Yes.
Okay. And with that, I will end our meeting for this morning. Thank you again for everyone who participated, and we look forward to seeing you on April the 10th for Victory Gardens 2021. And have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.